Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by Taj. Now, this young man is an amazing student filmmaker. It's just with the opportunity in my job at Mason, I get an opportunity to meet such creative students doing things that I could never imagine of doing at their young age. So I decided to have Taj on the podcast to just, learn about his creative process, and then also just, learn about what he aspires to do in the future, because, the future is so bright. But before we get into this episode, Taj, give the listeners a little bit of a background or introduction of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I am Taj Kokayi. I'm currently a junior at George Mason University. I'm a filmmaker and artist activist, and I primarily focus my stories on Afrofuturism and the stories of people of color.
I love it. I love the you said social social activist or
artist activist.
Artist activist. That's what I was about to say. Social. I was like social activist. I got in there. I love that. Where did that before we launch into it, like, where did that term come from? Because that's the first time. Honestly, that's the first time I've heard of someone actually say that, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. It's been the term I've been using to describe myself and who I want to be in the future for the past several months. It first came from this panel or discussion I moderated for Mason. It was the Artist Activist Centering Black Voices event with Bree Newsom-Bass. She's an artist activist who does filmmaking, and she also she's a housing advocate for Black people and people of color. She's most famous for taking down the Confederate flag in South Carolina. So that's how she kind of became really big. But yeah, that was the term we used to describe her and the event. And I just kind of ran with it because it really described who I want to be and the type of storyteller I want to be.
I love that. So the type of storyteller you want to be. So what, someone to boil down that as an identity. I know identity words make a difference. So, I know we said people of color, but what are some particular topics that, through film that you really want to advocate for? Obviously there's so many, I hate this is Positive Philter, but we can always say there's so many issues in the world that, it's hard to attack all of them. So which ones would be ones that like you would hone in, for you personally, you really have a passion
definitely.
for it?
Yeah, so one of the ones I'm working on the most is social justice, to kind of get past the racial tension we're dealing with, because obviously we've always had racial tension, but it seems to be at a boiling point right now. So I'm making stories that depict that. I'm also working on stories that just kind of deal with the erasure of Black people in history and present day events, because obviously Black people have been erased from nearly everything. And there are so many topics we need to discuss that Black people are kind of at the center of, but American history has just kind of erased them. So I'm working on that as well. And then just, trying to think about how to word it, but idealizing a better future for us. And in order to get there, we have to get past the kind of dystopian place we're in right now.
I love it, dystopian. Yeah. That's like the word we use for a lot of those, and we'll tie into that Afrofuturism, but the future, those dystopian future. And, it's like always really easy and scary to think of or depict in film. You see, I think you see that more often. You see like a bad future rather than a positive future. I'm thinking like Mad Max and Waterworld, or, I mean, that was just a bad movie in general, but in general, like movies where they depict. So what would be like a project where you depict an optimistic future? Like what would be some themes in that for you?
Yeah, so some themes would be true authentic integration, because obviously America has quote unquote integrated, and we're not segregated anymore, but there still is a lot
Mhm.
of separation between what it means to be a white American, what it means to be Black American, and what it means to be American of color. So there's lots of layers that we need to get past, whether it's housing rights, financial, education, just so many systemic things that we have to get past. So kind of, I guess, I want my films to kind of be the guideline and sort of path on how we can get past those so we can get to a actual better tomorrow instead of just staying in the dystopian future that we are already in. Because that's what we're in. Like so many films depict a dystopian future, but they don't recognize that we're currently in the dystopian future. Like this is the dystopian future. We need to get out of it.
That's great. I mean, that's a weird. I mean, not a weird concept. That's a new concept. Like, I'm thinking about all the movies that we watch in regards to the future, and I never really thought like technically we're in the future in
Yeah.
that sense,
Mhm.
with technological advances, and that I don't know. Just that's the first time I ever thought like we're in this, but right that we're honing in that word dystopian, where it's
Mhm.
like still not very it's still a lot of work to be done. I think
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you. And then one of the things I really pulled out of what you just said too was that while we are integrated, there is systemic issues that still resemble segregation, but not. I guess what we'll say is
Mhm.
it's not overt anymore,
Yeah. Covert
right?
racism. Yeah, right there.
Covert. So it could be also covert segregation. For
Mhm.
instance, I'm thinking like you know education, right? Like over time, you can go to any school you want to,
Mhm.
like we have like ability to go to any school, but still layers wise, if you look, certain levels of
Mhm.
access is still there.
Yeah.
So I thought of that. I love that because even
Yeah,
during the
definitely.
podcast, my wheels are spinning. But
Mhm.
let's go back to the beginning. When did you start really getting interested in film? Like as a kid, what was those stories like? How
Yeah.
how did this skill and this passion develop?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I've always wanted to be a storyteller. Back in, elementary school and middle school, I would write little sci-fi novels and little superhero stories, but I never thought I'd have it as a career. I always kind of wanted to be a storyteller and a kind of an author, but I thought I'd go into something like marketing because that's what both my parents are in. And then I want to say probably my sophomore year of high school, my father does a lot of marketing and marketing procurement, and he took me with him to an ad agency, and I got to see how they make commercials, which led me into videography, which led me to cinematography, which led me to filmmaking. And then around my junior year of high school, I started taking broadcast video class and learning how to use cameras, that kind of stuff, and just work on short films. And 5 years later, here I am.
So what was like, take us back. Did you like make a little film in high school with friends? Like, what was your first real project?
Yeah, obviously, I guess for every filmmaker, their first project is kind of one they don't want to talk about a lot. But I mean, for me, my first project was something called it was either called Starving or Melon. I can't remember what name we ended up using, but it was for a 1 week filmmaking project we had to do. So for our class we would have to get with a group of other other broadcast students, and we get like five of us, and we make a short film in 7 days from writing, shooting, acting, editing, all of that. And we did that. I wrote it and co-directed it, and I acted in it, and we made it in 7 days, and we edited it, and then it was not the best thing ever, but at least we did it. So that's probably my first project.
Do you still have it? Like, do you like, yeah. And I say that because I even do this with this podcast. Like, do you still have access to it and
Hmm.
peek at it and listen to it?
Yeah.
Because I would do a challenge if you haven't do that, because it'd be great to see how far you've come. Like I did that with my first episode of the podcast. It was crazy. But
Hmm.
have you looked at it yet? Have you looked at your first film?
Yeah. I think I think the co-director had it somewhere, and she showed me like a year ago of it. I got to rewatch. I was like, oh man, like our lighting was awful. The sound, the acting was bad. My acting was bad. And then I compared it to the things I'm working on now, like this film I produced last year, the film I just directed a few months ago, and it is exponentially better. So it's like in a short time, there's been a lot of growth, which I guess is promising for my future.
Yeah, that's dope. So okay, so you're doing these projects in high school, um, and as a young person going to college, like you could have studied anything. Where you were like, okay, uh, when did you decide? even in high school, like I want to study film rather than, like,
Mhm.
because this could always be a side hustle or a hobby. You could have studied that same marketing and just, when did
Mhm.
you want to devote a discipline to film?
Yeah. I would say it was somewhere in between my junior, it was probably my junior year. That's what I'm going to say. Because I was transitioning from that marketing side, because I was taking marketing classes. And then my junior year, I started taking broadcast classes. And I was thinking about going to broadcast journalism because I was really interested in
Mhm.
cameras and that kind of stuff. And then I was working on short films, like I mentioned. And I just learned that I could really write and direct and just make short narrative stories. So I'd say probably halfway through my junior year of high school is when I decided I want to devote my life to film.
And then okay, and additionally, while you're looking, there's a lot of different aspects of film. I'm learning that
Hmm.
now, right?
So
Uh,
many.
the the directing, the producing, the editing. When did you, I know that you do a lot of the writing part
Hmm.
before because you even came to the screenwriting panel. Um, as as you're getting into this field, which one did you like the most? Because obviously you got to do a little bit of everything, but which one do
Yeah.
you gravitate? Do you like the most?
Well, like you said, I've done a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
On my personal projects, I like to be kind of involved with everything, whether it's sound, camera, editing. So like I'm working on relinquishing some of the control of the projects, but I'd say the two areas I'm most interested in are directing and writing because those are ones where you get to have the most creative influence. And for my future career, I'm probably most interested in writing because I want to go into the TV industry, and writers are the people who craft the stories and just create the narrative. So I'd say writing is my main one right now.
Right. So obviously with the writing, right? Like, writing articles or just writing in general, you have a lot of dumps. Like you just write.
Hmm.
Take us through your writing process? Because you don't film everything you write, right? You might have
Yeah.
something banked. You might have,
Hmm.
like a writer's notebook, like a rapper, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
You got your
I
best
got one.
rhymes. So
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, what's your writing process like?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, oh man, Phil, I am plagued by thoughts of new ideas. Like
Yeah.
I'll be up at 2, 4 a.m. I'll be sleeping. I'll wake up like, oh my goodness, that'd be a great film idea. Turn to my phone, open my notes, write it down. I'll write down different quotes, different character names, and then I'll put in Google Drive. And then like I turn the ideas I make into scripts probably 10, 15% of the time, but I just have a long list of different concepts for films I can do, whether they're features, short films, TV shows, all kinds of stuff. So there's just ideas popping up all the time.
I love it. Do you study? Like, I remember we were in that panel, or you came in that panel. Do you actually
Mhm.
study when you watch a show? Like,
Absolutely.
remember they said
Yep.
study TV to make TV.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you study shows?
Yeah. Well, the easiest way for me to study is just to watch things and consume them. So I watch a lot of television and movies. I spent this entire quarantine pretty much watching the most famous TV shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, all that kind of stuff, and just analyzing the narrative structure, whether it's how they do their acts, how they introduce characters, what the stakes are, that kind of stuff. And then after I watch a show, I'll go back. I'll read the pilot script. So I've read the pilot script for Lovecraft Country, for Barry, for Arrow, for like probably a dozen shows right now. So I'm just reading. I'm watching YouTube videos that are kind of character breakdowns, analysis, theory videos, that kind of stuff, just so I can understand
Mm.
all the different layers. The show I've been analyzing the most is Game of Thrones right now because obviously George R. R. Martin has so much depth to his writing. So that's like there's a lot of different layers in there. And because I've watched the entire show now and I'm watching these YouTube videos on it and reading articles, I'm able to really learn more about writing and how to craft a very fleshed out world. So all that stuff is really helpful for me.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Like, and I think you're talking about Afrofuturism. I could see, and correct me if I'm wrong. You're gravitating. I know you gravitate to a lot of stories of blackness, but you also gravitate to a lot of science fiction, which
Yes.
lends yourself to a lot of like not this world. Like you said, you can create whole
Mhm.
worlds in science fiction. Like I think if you do like a nonfiction book, you have to kind of be really
Mhm.
tied to our reality. But in science fiction, you can, like you said, you
Yeah.
can make a fake name of a planet and just go off of
Mhm.
that. Is that somewhere like you really into the science fiction?
Absolutely. Before storytelling, before film, before writing books, science fiction was my first love. I've always been in love with, aliens, futuristic stories, superheroes, all kind of stuff. So even while I was like 4 or 5 years old, I would just imagine me living in a sci-fi world, and that led to me becoming a little novel writer in middle school, and now me becoming a filmmaker. So the stories I want to tell in the future are mostly set in a sci-fi world, whether it be years or centuries in the future, or just advanced technology right now, or all kinds of stuff. So, sci-fi is definitely the genre I want to be in most.
Yeah, and then speak to it. I mean, I know I did an episode on Afrofuturism, and it's still a genre that I'm not super familiar with. I'm learning a little bit
Mhm.
more, but you actually took a full course on it. So for
Yes,
the
I did.
listeners that are not very familiar with the concept, and
Mhm.
now that I'm gonna put you on a spotlight, like see if you actually listen to the class that you actually studied. What is Afrofuturism for someone that has no clue what that term
Mhm.
means?
Yeah, and that is a lot of people. Most people don't know what Afrofuturism actually means. So, just to put it simply, Afrofuturism is a form of art and storytelling that connects the African and African American experience to forward thinking and science fiction, usually in the form of advanced technology or futuristic ideas. Now, most people think Afrofuturism is just black sci-fi, but it's much deeper than that. It's culture, it's a philosophical way of life, and it's a form of liberation and revolution.
I love it. Can you and think about it? Yeah, like it's more than just black sci-fi. Because I was
Hmm.
about to say like, okay, I thought it was like like steampunk. Future. It's
Yeah.
sci-fi-ish, but it is more than that. Because now that I
Hmm.
think about it, like the examples that stand out in my mind with Afrofuturism is obviously the Black Panther.
Black Panther.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because there's a full cultural aspect to that. And then there was a book I read in middle school, The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm, which
Hmm.
was like this book about these three kids that lived in Africa, but in the future. And it was like really infused with they talked about tribes and kings
Hmm.
and queens. So it was more than just the future. It was actually infusion Africa, like
Yeah.
Africana into that.
Hmm.
So can you speak to that part, the beyond sci-fi part? Because I really like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, relating back to sci-fi, most sci-fi stories and futuristic stories, they're centered around an idealized world and idealized future. But oftentimes, Black people are nowhere to be found in those futures. Like, there's no Black person or person of color in these futuristic stories. And Afrofuturism takes the futuristic idea and centers Black people and their culture, and shows that Black people do have a future. And it's kind of reassuring to us because obviously history has tried to erase us in every way, and Afrofuturism is kind of the reverse, where it's giving us an actual future and showing us that we are the blueprint.
Oh wow. Okay. That was like wow. Okay. And when you say the past erases, like, are you assuming like when uh, history is a little whitewashed, where
Absolutely.
like people grow up and they never knew that certain things were invented, like the stoplight
Hmm.
was invented by Garrett Morgan. Like that's what you mean, right? When is that the
Yeah.
concept that you mean? Like how
Hmm.
like a lot of American history, like was integral. Like Black people were integral like in
Hmm.
American history, but we just like people are so surprised when they hear about so many inventions and science and discoveries by Black people. Is that kind of what you mean
Yeah.
by
No.
that?
Yeah. Definitely. Relating to American history, Black people are kind of confined to three or four major eras. It
Mhm.
is the slave trade, slavery, Jim Crow era, and then post segregation. That's all Black people are seen in. But there's really more of that. Like, we invented thousands of things. We were crucial to the foundation of this country, whether it be in mathematics, in science, and government, all kinds of stuff. And even past American history, African culture was kind of the blueprint for most other European and just world cultures. Like, African culture and African history influenced a lot of Greek culture, a lot of Roman culture, and it was really crucial to the development of our world and creating these kind of more modernized and futuristic societies that we live in now. And oftentimes people just don't know that because African culture is just erased completely.
And so that storytelling is very empowering. Like, so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I like to do, but like, so storytelling is integral in that, right? Being a good
Hmm.
storyteller,
Yeah.
and creating those narratives because, um, it gives a voice to stories that have gone untold. And
Mhm.
so I love the fact that you can infuse that in the past with telling stories of the past, but you can also like create a story or narrative for the future,
Mhm.
um, using Black voices or centering on Black people. Um,
Yeah.
what, and we're jumping around, but like, and you're doing a lot of things. What made you want to come to Northern Virginia and the DC area for film? Because I'm not, while I'm an industry advisor, I don't know what are the top film programs in the United States. I can't tell
Uh-huh.
you that. I was going to think I was just going to go with some assumption that maybe they're in California. I don't know,
They are.
like
They are.
like
Yeah.
like
Yes.
UCL,
USC,
yeah,
UCLA.
USC or
Yep.
UCLA or something. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So
Yeah.
like of
No.
all places, throwing a dart on the map. Why? Yeah, why here?
It's an interesting story. So, like you said, I was applying to the big film schools, USC, UCLA, Chapman, Loyola Marymount, all those kind of places. And I think those are the only four schools I applied to initially. And then I got this invitation to come to a conference over summer at this small school I'd never heard of called George Mason University. I never heard of Fairfax, Virginia. I never heard of George Mason. And then my mom convinced me to go to the program. It was for journalism and media. So I was there for broadcast, and I went there for it was five and a half days is how long I was there over the summer. It was the I think it was the third week of July, second or third week of July. I went there for 5 days, and I fell in love with the campus. I fell in love with the environment, and I just decided that Mason's where I wanted to go. And then I looked into their film program, and Mason's the top film program in Virginia. And one of the unique things about the film program at Mason is that it allows you to actually work on stories and hone your voice. Whereas most film schools, for your first 3 years, they make you focus on the theory and the kind of analysis of film, and you don't get to make actual film until your senior year. Film at Mason has you make films all 4 years, all the time. So it's been a
Man,
really nice for me to develop.
where'd you like? Did you stay on campus in a dorm in that 4 days, 5 days?
Yes, I did. Hmm.
What'd you say? Which one did you stay in?
So I went to that program twice. I went the first time
Okay.
as a youth correspondent, which is like one of the students are. That I came back as an intern. So the first time I stayed in, I want to say it was the first time I think we stayed in Blue Ridge, maybe,
Hmm.
and then the second time we stayed at Hampton Roads.
Wow, wow. And so, like, I think that was really attractive. You said you saw that there was an opportunity to hit the ground running and start making films. I think that's a very
Hmm.
attractive thing because you felt
It
like you could
is.
create. So, like, what as soon as you touched down, uh, what was some of the? I guess what was some of the transition pains as it is to adjusting to college and
Hmm.
also just like I guess adjusting to having to start a project or a film project, for you
Yeah.
as a
No.
freshman.
Yeah, it was. There were some transition pains, obviously, because you're coming to a new environment. For me, it was coming to a state I'd only been to twice at the time, and just kind of navigating the area. I never really been to DC out of those two small trips I took. So it was living with a roommate who I had only met briefly, living in a dorm with people I didn't really know, and kind of being an outsider coming from Georgia to Virginia because there's a lot of culture in Virginia. Like in Virginia, area code numbers are a very big thing. Like if you go to parties, everyone's like 804, 703. I'm like, that like going up, that just didn't matter. I mean, so like it's been kind of a transition into learning that culture. And then as a film student, it was really just learning more of the kind of details behind telling stories and how you can hone your voice. Because I was fortunate enough to be in a broadcast program at my high
Hmm.
school
Hmm.
where our teacher taught us a lot about the different kinds of technical aspects like cinematography, working on sound, how to edit stuff. So I came in already knowing mostly fundamental and basic things about filmmaking, but I need to hone my voice as a storyteller and as a narrator. So that was kind of one of the things I had to ease into.
Did you feel like you already had a little bit of an advantage? Like,
Mhm.
and not to, like I said, no shade on your peers, but was it like, did you notice that maybe some students didn't already have that foundational background as freshmen?
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, definitely no shade to my peers whatsoever. They're all vastly talented, but just because I was in a broadcast program for 2 years, I had the kind of foundation that they didn't get to have because they didn't get to take film classes in high school. So I kind of already knew how to edit a video. I knew how to
Mhm.
set up a camera. I knew what a tripod was, which is kind of the stuff we learned in the 200 level classes. So I kind of already knew that, and it wasn't bad for any of us. I was able to actually help them learn. I was able to help them learn a little bit more, which was really beneficial for me as a mentor and going to that role as a student leader, and then for them learning how to just be a filmmaker. So
Now, I ain't gonna lie. I think you're the student that does 1,000 things. I see your name just as much as you see, as just as much
that
as you
is,
see my name. So,
mhm.
where did you start? Like, what was some of the early opportunities to do things outside the classroom, and particularly outside of film?
Yes,
That you
definitely.
saw to get involved.
So the first major thing I did was I studied abroad my freshman year. I
Hmm.
went to Spain for 6 months during my spring semester. I came to Virginia for from August to December, and then January I left and I came back again next August. So I studied abroad, and then I was also kind of involved with Mason Cable Network, which is the broadcast program we have at Mason. So I did videography for them. I did some sports stuff, some editing, that kind of stuff, and then I did couple other things, but my sophomore year is when I really hit the ground running. I joined BSA, BLACC as on both the e-boards. I became an international exchange student mentor. I did a bunch of other things. I started working on campus, and then that's when I really started getting involved. And I was able to network, meet people who worked on different e-boards, and just kind of learn what it means to be a student leader and just someone who's actively involved. So that was the root of it.
Yeah, so I see this. I see that we know you got the good lighting and you're back home. So what has been, because I see you're still doing it. It's not like honestly, I forgot that you were even home as much as I see you. So how do you like really try to stay involved and plugged in even back
Mhm.
home right now during COVID?
Yeah, well, obviously, for those who don't know, I'm home in Ackworth, Georgia, which is 9.5, 10 hours away from Virginia. So I'm not on campus, or I'm not even in the Fairfax or Virginia area. So where most people who are off campus can just drive up to campus and visit that kind of stuff, I can't do that because I can't drive 9 hours just to visit people
Yeah.
for a day. But what's been really great about this time during quarantine is the ability to interface with people through Zoom, like we're doing right now. I'm on Zoom meetings and panels probably every day, at least once, twice a day. So that's helped me stay involved and engaged. I'm emailing people back and forth. I'm trying to touch into pretty much everything I can, whether it's Black organizations, film, podcasts like this, panels, just student involvement, promoting events that are happening, housing, all kinds of stuff. So I'm using this time as a virtual student to just touch everything, because that's the benefit of technology. You can touch everything no matter where you are. So
So and then ideally, your goal is we come back to Fairfax and you get that in person that aspect. Do you foresee any like difficulty adjusting back? Because mine this might be your time where you're thriving because you get to do so much, and then when
mhm.
you come back to a physical campus, you might have to cut some of the when I say cut some of the obligations off.
Yeah.
Like it's probably easier to do a lot because we're Zoom. But
Hmm.
maybe when we're on campus, and I'm talking to myself as well, where it's
Yeah.
like when we're back on campus, that maybe it won't be as easy to jump in because I'm jumping on meetings in
Hmm.
my car and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I might not be able to jump. So are you
Hmm.
foreseeing some things like that, or like you got like you can keep the same energy? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely on the same page as you. I've been saying that one of the benefits of being so involved in this time is that everything's on Zoom, so I can just come into my office, turn my computer on, hop on a Zoom call, and then go back to my room. But normally, like before quarantine started, I would have to get up, get dressed, and then travel to a place, whether it's on campus or in DC or Baltimore. So it really cut down on transportation time and just traveling. So that's something I will have to adjust back to when I come back to campus. But in terms of work, it will be different, but I'm still looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to that kind of engagement with people in person. We'll still have to take precautions and wear masks and do our best at distancing, but I'm looking forward to a future where we can go back to normal and just interact again.
So you said you're a junior, right?
Yes.
Obviously career planning is involved.
Hmm.
What are some of your thoughts? Like, you saw a lot of the different panelists. You saw a lot of the different filmmakers. We know that you could do it anywhere, but what are some of your like, obviously the plans can change. This is a
Hmm.
podcast. You could change your mind, but what are some of your thoughts now? Like, what do you want to do You cross the stage and you graduate. What are some of your ideas that
Mhm.
you have for yourself?
Yeah, well, my my kind of goal for the past several years has been to graduate and go to LA and get into that film and Hollywood environment. Because, as my father says, you have to fish where the fish are. So, in order to be a filmmaker, I always imagined I would go to Hollywood. But now, during this virtual era, we're seeing that things are kind of more spread out. So, I'm kind of considering staying in DC for a year or two and then going to LA and helping me build my network more. Because another thing my father says all the time is that business moves at the speed of relationships. And I've been able to build a lot of relationships at Mason. So I want to kind of foster those, and then I can go off into LA and be well prepared.
Was graduate school a thought, or you think that's like not necessary for a lot of filmmakers, or I don't know,
No, I
just
mean,
throwing out there.
okay. I'll say this. I don't think I don't necessarily think I need to go graduate school. But it has been a thought that I've been having. I've been having it since I'm in college because I think that would be nice to develop more as a student, not just in the traditional academic sense, but as a student of different crafts and to learn and to be mentored more. So I've been thinking about going to grad school. I've been thinking about going to grad schools in the DC area recently. I'm at the moment I'm potentially considering trying to go to Howard. We'll see how that goes. It depends. I may apply to Howard, may apply to USC. So I think I want to focus in on film a little bit more just to hone my craft and develop.
Now, also additionally, and I think you talked about the business side of it,
Mhm.
um, and I don't know, just the money, right, or the working with other people. Um, how do you think young students foster that skill, right? Because like
Mhm.
obviously you can get better with a camera. Do you think
Yeah.
that getting involved in student leadership has helped hone that like networky, businessy,
Ab-
e-boardy sense, or no? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
no. Absolutely. I think networking and building relationships is the most important part of really any career because everything is a business. Podcasting is a business, film is a business, marketing is a business, cooking is a business, everything is a business. And in order to have a business, you need people to help you and to support you. So building a network has been phenomenal for me because I've been able to meet people from the Black student organizations, from the student involvement organizations, from different countries who study abroad. I've been able to work with faculty at Film and Mason, with staff members, with housing members, everyone. So my name's been tossed around a lot, and that allows me to get more opportunities. So recently, I started hosting a video series for University Life, and that came about because I knew someone who worked there, and like I didn't apply. They just threw my name out and said, "Hey, Taj would be great for this," and that's happened probably 4 or 5 times. Like people just said my name, and I've been invited to things. So building network has really set me ahead, and what I would advise students to do is to work different jobs because jobs provide more jobs. You like if you work a video job with one director, that director recommends you to another director, and you get a new job. It happened to me twice in 2019. It's happened to me a few times since. So networking is absolutely key.
So, obviously, what has been maybe one, I guess, concrete obstacle in your film journey that was a real challenge that you had to overcome? You know, whether that's writer's block or whether
Mhm.
that was self doubt, like your film wasn't good, or what was just a
Mhm.
challenge you had to overcome?
Yeah, no. Well, writer's block is very real for every writer, no matter what you're doing, whether it's articles, screenwriting, novels, anything. Writer's block is difficult. So I've dealt with that in the past, but I'd say recently my biggest obstacle has probably been this quarantine. Like when I first came back, because just to rewind the clock a little bit, back in spring 2019, I was in the process of shooting a film that I was supposed to make for my fiction film directing class. I had pitched it to my professor, got selected to make it, got selected to direct it, and I was like a week and a half away from shooting, and then quarantine hit, so I had to come back. Film had to be postponed a few times, and then I'm in Georgia. I'm at home with my parents and my brother and sister. That's not really a huge film crew. We've been staying inside because we're socially distancing, so I can't really work with other film people in the area. So in order to make films, I'd have to rely on me, my brother, and my younger sister, who's 14 going on 15 now. So it's not the same film crew I had at Mason where I had students who were like, yeah, I work in film all the time. So That was difficult. The first few months were kind of rough because I had a couple of summer jobs, internships lined up in DC. They got canceled because of COVID-19, and then obviously my films got delayed. So I had to kind of work around and think to myself, okay, what can I shoot in my house with the gear I have, with the people I have, and it worked out. I made a film where the only on-screen actor is my brother. I shot it and directed it. I was a voice actor, and my sister was the assistant director. So we made it with the three of us, and turned out pretty well. So
is that the one that I watched? That film was.
it absolutely is. Mm-hmm.
So you use your family. That's That's amazing. Yep. So hey, so now did they get or are they getting into it, or did they want to be filmmakers too, or they were just like doing it to help you out?
Yeah, I mean, like my brother, he's a phenomenal artist. He's going to NYU right now, and he's focusing in recording music. So, and like he did theater in high school, so he had some acting experience. I was fortunate enough to have a semi-trained actor to be my lead. He's been great. My sister has always been interested in makeup and kind of costume design, so she was helping out with that. And she's kind of getting into theater and video and broadcast, that kind of stuff. So she's going to high school in the next semester she's in high school, so she's kind of getting into that. But yeah, they're like we're all interested in storytelling and kind of being narrative creators.
Oh, okay. Now we're gonna go do a full pivot because I did not know. Well, I knew I saw the film was great, but I did not know that was in your home one, and I didn't know that was like a whole family affair. So tell me what that family affair was. Was y'all getting into it, or y'all like arguing, or was it smooth sailing the whole time, or what?
I mean, it was mostly smooth sailing. Most of the difficulties we had came from me, just kind of being overwhelmed because I was the director wearing multiple hats. I was directing, doing cinematography. I was the writer. I had to be the editor. I had to do sound. So like whereas most directors can just focus on talking to actors and saying, okay, have this emotion, yada yada yada. When I was shooting it, I was like, okay, is everything in frame? Is the sound on? Is it going to move right? Can I cut at this point? Yada, yada, yada. So it got a little bit stressful, but my brother and sister were phenomenal. They're both really supportive. They were eager and willing to help me on this film. And it was great because if I didn't have them, it was not possible.
And was there a deadline, right? This was for a class? Did you have a deadline?
It was for a class, yeah.
So you had like set deadlines and just kind of like really keep the ship moving, like because you had to make this film from start to finish.
Yep.
When did you realize like this is a really good film? And I forgot the name of it, but I know I watched it. When did you realize that you wanted to use it to enter? Because I know you entered it in a few contests. So when did you realize that this was like, one, give the name of the film again because I forgot. But two, like when did you realize that this was something that you wanted to submit for things and this was a high quality work? Because it was.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the name of the film is Woken from a Dream, and for the listeners who do not know, it is about a mod who is a college-age Black man who finds himself exhausted by the racial tension he experiences every day. So he decides to use a virtual reality headset to escape to a different world. And at the point that I realized that it was a good film, I'd probably say, after the initial screening is when I really learned how influential and just how much it resonated. Because obviously when you make a film, you always think it's going to go when people like it. But then after people watched it during the first week of screening, I got tons of DMs and messages from family members and people I had just connected with on Twitter and Instagram, that kind of stuff. And they're like, Taj, this film is really great. Like I really understood it. Like it said all those things I can't say or express, but I resonate with this. So that's when I kind of said, okay, maybe if I submit this to places, festivals will think it's a good film as well. And I have, and right now we've been selected into 8 festivals, and we've won 4 awards in 2.5 months.
That's it. I mean, this is the peak. This is the breaking point, man. I better like put your name all up in the comments and stuff, so people can look up my podcast later on. But I mean, I think that's always something that's a good feeling, especially creatively. Writing or whatever, podcasting, whatever, that external validation. But then at the same time, I think that even as a creator, I think we both can agree that there's a certain point where you're like, I was gonna make this anyway. And you gotta have some intrinsic value. Like I like it, whatever. If you don't like it, tough. I stand by it, and then and then ideally you have such faith in it that you keep on putting it out there. Someone's going to like it too. What would you tell a young filmmaker similar to that theme, where it's like they have some hesitation about getting started because they're always lenient toward external validation for they need someone to tell them they're creative, or they need someone to tell them that was a good film or blog or whatever. So what would you tell someone like that?
Yeah, I would say that you cannot prove you can create until you actually create. In order to show people you can make films and write, you have to write and actually make the films. So, every filmmaker and storyteller is going to agree their first film or first story wasn't great. Most of us think, okay, we'll keep this in the back burner and just focus on my more present work. So just get past that first roadblock, make your first film, and you'll learn it. Your first film is meant to be a learning experience. You learn how to light, you learn how to tell a story, you learn how to direct actors, you learn how to edit. So make that first film, learn from it, and then apply those skills to your next film, learn from that film, apply it to your next film, so on and so forth, until you get to a point where you can be confident in your work and say, okay, I know what I'm doing, but I'm still going to learn every time I make a film.
I like that. What was beyond the external validation and creating like the roadblock of just getting started? What drives you? Like, not say drives you, but what drives you to continuously to get better? And then do you even have like as a student, right? Like, I bet someone out there says you made it, but I don't know. Do you feel like you made it, or you still have a long way to go?
Still a long way to go. I'm only at probably 1% of where I want to be. I have a very big plan for the future. And just to answer your question about what I want to do and my goal, I am a forward thinker. I'm constantly thinking in the future. And in terms of my filmmaking, I'm thinking of 30, 40 years from now, the little black boy or girl or child who's just sitting in their bedroom watching TV and then watching a sci-fi story, and there's no black people on it. I'm thinking of that because that was me. When I was younger, I was watching sci-fi and there were no black people anywhere. I just saw a bunch of white people and it made me feel invisible. So I want to create stories that make those students, that make those children and viewers just feel like they have a voice and that someone's looking out for them.
I mean, we get like the one or two characters. You feel me? Like we got Lando, Calrissian.
Yeah, I mean, we got Lando, we got Finn, but I mean,
Yeah, like we got Lando, we got Finn, we got the dude with from Reading Rainbow. That had the visor for Star Trek.
Yeah,
I feel what you're saying. Like I'm always I am a self-proclaimed blurred, black nerd.
Black nerd,
and I loved anime and cartoons and all that stuff. I growing up. And I still do, but I definitely think that representation matters, and it'd be a little bit more dope, right? To see a lot more, like, superheroes, like look like you, or more people in space flying spaceships. I think that really, really makes a difference. It's really impactful, and it's not just a story. It's not just because it's a make-believe story that doesn't change the fact that characters should be diverse.
Yeah, it influences who you are as a person.
Yeah, and imagination. Like we should have a space in imagination too. Like not just in
absolutely
documentaries, but in that creative, imaginary world. So I think I'm gonna hit one more question, and we go to one of my segments. So you're studying film, you're doing it, you're building relationships, all these different things. What would you tell someone in regards to being like the different pots? Like, for instance, how do you know to devote maybe learning a little bit more editing? How do you balance? Because from my understanding, honing the skills of making a film, I mean, you can just focus on the audio part and be the best audio technician. So how do you, do you want to be a Renaissance person, or are you really going to hone in on one lane for you? Because there's a lot. I feel like it could be overwhelming, skill-wise, skill development.
Yeah, no. So the way I think of it is, I always think of this quote from Quentin Tarantino, who's obviously one of the best directors working today. And he says that he wants to know what every single person on set does, which is what I want to do, because if you know what the other person does, what the editor does, what the cinematographer, lighter, gaffer, everybody does, that can inform you as a filmmaker and director. Like even if you aren't directing, even if you are the boom operator, if you know how a camera works, if you know how editing works, then that will influence the way you move the boom mic and the way that you work. So if you're a writer and you're thinking about the hair and makeup section, that's going to influence how you create characters. You're going to think about what would this character wear, what would they dress like, how would they put on their clothes, would they iron their clothes, so on and so forth. Film is a very collaborative and interactive medium, and everything is connected. So you have to learn about everything in order to make you a better filmmaker, a better storyteller, and just a better creator.
So you just dip a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the next part of the show. I call it shot for shot. So shot for shot means you get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first, or I go first?
Okay. You can go first.
All right. So we nerded out a little bit. If you could do a reboot of any major sci-fi TV show or movie, which one would you reboot? And then what would, when you reboot it, what would you change about it? What character would you change? What place would you change? I don't know. So what would you reboot?
Absolutely. Off the top of my head, if I could reboot anything, let me think. I really love the sci-fi story, the novel series called Animorphs. It was written back in
the book, yes.
Like the 80s and 90s with the kids who transform. Yeah, the books. I was obsessed with those. I was one of the kids who loved the book fair in elementary school. I was there all the time. I was in the library probably more than I was in some of my classrooms. I was always reading. I was friends with librarians, and I would read those books constantly. I loved them, but they weren't diverse. There was only a handful of characters of color. So if I were to reboot it, I'd make it more diverse and just more representative of the world we live in, because there are students from every background, and that influences how they see the world, how they interact with alien species like they do on the series. So yeah, probably Animorphs.
I remember that. I remember the book. It always had like Animorphs.
The cover.
Cover. They always had the person changing it to the animal. I do remember that. Yeah. That and Goosebumps. I remember those books for kids. So yeah. Okay, that was a good one. All right, go ahead. What's your question for me?
Yeah. So what has been your favorite film you've watched recently? There's been a lot of stuff, and quarantine's given us tons of time to watch stuff. So yeah.
I ain't gonna lie. So I've been watching a lot of documentaries. I have not sat down and watched a film. So the documentaries I watched, I watched the junk Crack, about crack on Netflix. I watched Fear City about the mob. I like that a lot. But I would say one random show, usually the shows are really lenient toward what me and my wife can watch together. I know that's a good show. I know it's a good show that when it holds both me and my wife's attention.
Yeah.
And so there's two shows that we watched together. One was called Sinner. I don't know if you heard of it. It's like a USA show.
I think I have, yeah.
They followed Detective Ambrose, and it's a really good show. Sinner, we watched that. And then the other show was The Servant, which is on Apple. I think it's produced by M. Night Shyamalan. Which, with his stories, like I'm watching the whole time, like, first of all, half of it, I'm like, what's going on? And, like it's not resolved because it's a show. So I like him. I like his, some of his movies are floppish, but I do like, he's like the next, Alfred Hitchcock with suspense. So
yeah, he's a great storyteller.
Shows. So those are the two shows, Sinner and The Servant. Those are the shows I watched. And then movies wise, I've just been watching documentaries. So.
Okay. Nice.
And every now and then too, I've been doing, I have to invite you. I've been doing like Netflix parties. It's like Netflix where you chat, but I find movies that are bad on purpose. It's so I can make fun of them. Like randomly, before they took it off, I watched Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes, which just watch any movie in the 90s, action movies where it made no sense. And the guy was like almost damn near invincible and jumping off stuff. I'm like, he would have broke his leg. Those kind of movies. I actually like to watch bad movies on purpose. I don't know. Do you like to do that sometimes?
Yeah. I like watching all movies because I love watching all movies because it allows me to, really study them and kind of learn from them. So it's great to watch.
So you got to watch the bad ones too. One show I actually do like a lot. You ever watched Mystery Science Theater 3000?
I can't say that I have. I feel like I've heard of it though.
You need to watch it. They watch like it's Mystery Science Theater 3000, and on purpose they watch the worst movies ever, and then they make
Hmm.
fun of them, and you
Okay.
watch them make fun of it. It's on Netflix, and the movies they watch are just absolutely like bottom of the barrel, grade B, terrible movies, but it's funny. And maybe it's something like you learn that like on the opposite end, like you learn like how filmmakers cut corners with budgets and
Hmm.
like just like this doesn't make no sense, or the guy walks in twice, like things like that can because like anything, like it takes a skill, but people are saving
Yeah.
money. So
Mhm.
well, this has been great. I'm really excited for this episode, and I learned some new things. That's one of the benefits of even just working with students is I have no clue uh, what I was talking about with film, and then I just work with a bunch of film students, and now I know things like boom mic and Afrofuturism and all this stuff
Yeah.
because I learned from the students. So shout out
Hmm.
to you for teaching me something new. Um,
Thank you.
Now is the part of the show called shout outs and plugs. So the
Hmm.
stage is show love to anyone you want to show love to, and then any plugs. And when I say plugs, I got my handy dandy notebook. I'll take
Okay.
notes and put the plugs, everything you plug, I'll put in the show notes so that the listeners can follow up with
Okay.
you. So
Perfect.
stage is
Yeah.
set. Shout outs and plugs.
Yeah. So I guess shouts right now. Main shouts to my brother. He just released his album, Who Do You Run To? He just released it a couple days ago. It's phenomenal. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and a number of other places that I can't remember. But his name is Taj Kokayi. He is a phenomenal rapper and music artist. So that came out recently. Definitely, that's my main shout out. And then other shout outs would be to the company Black Filmmaker. They make hoodies and T-shirts that just really it's really nice to see Black businesses succeed and Black filmmakers succeed. So if you watch Regina King's Saturday Night Live hosting a few days ago, she wore a Black filmmaker hoodie at the end, so that was really cool. And it's spelled it's no vowel, so it's BLKFLMMKR. So that's Black filmmaker. Those are my two shout outs right now. And I want to thank my family for being so supportive with me through this journey. I want to thank you, Phil, for always being a great mentor. Thank Mason and BSA and BLCC for always helping me develop. And yeah, and then you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Taj Kokayi. That's TAJKOKAYI, and Taj Kokayi on Facebook.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully, not hopefully, I know that you big things are coming. So, definitely gonna start bookmarking that IMDb page and see
Appreciate
all the
it.
different things that you have cataloged. Please, 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 ladies and gentlemen, please support and follow this young man in his journey in film. It's going to be quite the thing to watch, and I'm very excited for his journey as well. So, if you like this episode, please share it with a family and friends. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Sharing positivity is a movement, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.